Hey, Moneymakers, welcome back to another episode of Taking Stock Live. I'm your host, Kalila Reynolds, and there is a lot on my mind this evening. Tonight, we're having a conversation about several things going on in the country. We got to talk about back to school. We got to talk about the traffic. We got to talk about productivity. We got to talk about what's going on the Jamaica Stock Exchange these days with all these late filings and whatever is on your mind. Of course, we always encourage you to leave a comment and contribute. Of course, we also have election results from both Jamaica and Guyana to talk about, and quite a few other things as well. So tonight is one of those shows where me and you just hold a par. We're talking, we're chatting, we're discussing things going on in the economy and with your money, things that are having an impact on your pocket. So leave a comment in the chat. Let me know what part of Jamaica or what part of the world you are joining us from. And of course, tell a friend. Taking Stock is on and live. Hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, share with a friend, and let them know that we are here because we're talking all things money tonight. And of course, let's get this money. The Jamaica Labour Party will form Jamaica's government for a third consecutive term. They defeated the People's National Party, taking 35 seats in Parliament to the PNP's 28. It's the first time in the party's history that it has won national elections 3 times in a row. Party leader Andrew Holness also became the first JLP leader to serve as Prime Minister for 3 straight terms. After the final count, the JLP has claimed 35 seats to the PNP's 28. This as the JLP gained the Kingston Central seat in the final count. Meanwhile, in Guyana, President Dr. Irfan Ali has been sworn in for a second term following a landslide victory in the September 1st general election. The People's Progressive Party Civic secured 36 seats in the 65-member National Assembly. We Invest in Nationhood won 16 seats and replaces a Partnership for National Unity as the main parliamentary opposition. APNU only managed to earn 12 seats. United Oil and Gas has received the final permits it needs to start collecting and testing samples for oil and gas just off Jamaica's shoreline. The UK-based company said it was granted a beach license that will allow it to extract sediments from the ocean floor within the Walton Morant license area to test for the presence of oil and gas. United said after the extraction, analysis of the samples could take several weeks. The results will be key in deciding whether to start drilling. The company did not give a specific timeline for the project. Omni Industries is ramping up the export side of its business following its first shipment of paint buckets and lids to Barbados. The company sent almost 5,000 buckets to Barbados last week. Omni's entry into Barbados follows its first shipments to Guyana in May as a part of its push to become a regional supplier of thermoplastics. Managing Director Patrick Kumst told Taking Stock earlier this year that the company aims to have exports make up 20% of its revenues over the medium term. Investment banking app Robinhood and advertising app AppLovin will be added to the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is made up of the USA's 500 largest companies. The apps are expected to list on the index on September 22. Robinhood will replace casino operator Caesars Entertainment, while AppLovin will take Market Access Holdings' spot on the index. AppLovin and Robinhood both went public in 2021 during the COVID-19 pandemic. Robinhood is a favorite among U.S. retail investors. Meanwhile, the stock of AppLovin, which brings targeted ads to mobile apps and games, is up more than 1,000% since 2023.
What's Hot was brought to you by JMMB Group, your best interest at heart.
You've been asking, Kalila, how do I start investing? How do I learn to budget? How can I get out of all this debt? Well, I put it all in one place. The Money Mission Workbook teaches you what you need to know to start on your journey to financial freedom. If you've been scared to start, this is your sign to get your finances under control. Head on over to Amazon.com to buy now. The link is in my bio. Let's get this money.
Welcome back. Let me see who we have joining us tonight. We've got Garfield saying good night. Moneymaker Spanish Town in the house. Dwight is here as usual. Still looking forward to seeing the market doing much better than this, aren't we all? Supervillain is joining us from Negril. The Diplomat is in ATL. Ezekiel Gruis? I don't know. Is that French? I don't know if that's a place. Scotty is saying the vibe. Diplomat says, you're doing great. Your city was very dangerous today. Be safe out there. Yeah, you heard all the drama in Mandeville today. Shootout and standoff with police. A lot going on over in Mandeville. Dalton is joining us from Cayman Islands. Humble Boss saying good night to the moneymakers, checking in from Negril. We've got Earl in Helsha. We got Roswell saying good evening to all the viewers. Philip is in TCI saying thank you to Dr. Street Forest. Welcome to CEO Morrison. Let's take this thing higher. And we should be joined by Mr. Morrison next week here on Taking Stock. Ingrid saying good evening, checking in from Bull Bay in St. Andrew. We've also got Michael in Kingston and Kish. What happened to my mouse suddenly freeze up? Kish saying good evening to all. Ezekiel saying greetings from Ocho Rios. Ome is in Jacaranda Homes, and Chris saying good night from New York City. Let me see if I can figure out what's going on here. Technological challenges. All right, good. Diplomat talking about the new JSE appointment as well. So we should be having Mr. Livingston, the new JSE CEO, on next week here on Taking Stock. We're trying to get him tonight, but it didn't quite work out. So tonight it is a me and you par. We are talking about some things. Productivity is high on my mind. First of all, welcome back to school to all our young ones who are back in the classroom this week. Should have been last week because the election kind of delayed things. So by the way, congratulations to the Jamaica Labour Party and Prime Minister Andrew Holness and all the members of that party who were successful in the election in Jamaica last week. Congratulations also to Dr. Irfan Ali and the PPPC in Guyana, who were also returned to power last week, September 1. Their election took place. So we're expecting to see continuity in both countries, a continuation of government policies, a continuation of the PPPC's infrastructure development drive in Guyana. And here in Jamaica, we're looking forward to the implementation of some of those campaign promises, one of the largest being the implementation of the increase in the minimum wage to, what did he say, $35,000 throughout the course of the term. So over the next 5 years. And then also the lowering of the income tax rate to 15%, which I see as a move in the right direction. But as we start school again this week, I am reminded of the traffic woes. Because the summer was nice, smooth sailing in Kingston. You're getting from point A to point B in fairly decent time. It's not so bad. And now school is back in session. Welcome back to all our students. But now the roads are gridlocked yet again, morning and evening, from early in the morning. And then anything after 3 o'clock, it is impossible to get anywhere in any decent amount of time. And I know that it is usually concentrated around the start of the new school year. I suppose parents just want to be very individual. Everybody wants to drop off their child on that very first day. And it tends to happen around the first couple of weeks, maybe the first 2 weeks or so. And then it eases a little bit. But in general, school traffic just causes nightmares on the road. And it got me to thinking about productivity and the lack of productivity, the loss of productivity by being in traffic for so many hours. I remember a few years ago, when I was at Nationwide News Network, I did a commentary on what the loss of productivity due to traffic costs us as a country. There was one particularly bad traffic jam in 3 miles. And this was, I went back to look for my notes, and this was sometime in 2018. something happened in 3 miles. I don't remember what it was that happened at 3 miles that resulted in a complete standstill of traffic for about 2 hours. And so people were stuck in traffic, unable to move, unable to go forwards or backwards for 2 hours. And I said, you know what, let me calculate what that actually costs Jamaica. And at the time, GDP per capita was about 4,798 US dollars. So that's per person. And I calculated that there are about 261 working days in a year. So when you divide GDP per capita by the number of days that you work in a year. So GDP per capita is the amount of, roughly speaking, the amount of money each person earns. I believe that is up now. Let me see how much current GDP per capita is. GDP per capita, Jamaica. Wow, it's gone up to 7,000. So at the time, we were at just under 5,000 USD per year. That's the average person's earnings per year, divided by 261 working days in a year, because you work Monday to Friday, so subtract weekends, subtract holidays. And so that's about $2,536 per day, Jamaican dollars now per day. Divided by 8 hours in a working day, that was about $317 per hour. It's average Jamaican wages. And then you multiplied that by 70,000 motorists on the roads affected by that particular incident. And we got to $22 million for every hour stuck in traffic doing nothing. And it was 2 hours that people were stuck in traffic. So we got to $44 million in productivity lost because of those 2 hours stuck in traffic. Now, if we adjust for where GDP per capita is today, what our average wages are today, we've gone from 5,000 to 7,000. It's going to be even more than that. So probably I'd roughly estimate about $60 million if you were to have a similar situation. But the thing is, we have a similar situation almost every day for a lot of people, because the time that it takes you to get from home to school to drop off your kids and then to work, it's probably about a good hour for a lot of people who live in the corporate area. And then you have to leave work. And for moms, this is a reality for some people. Leave work, pick up the kids, go back to work, and then in the evening from work to home again, it's probably a good 2 hours per day that you are spending in traffic. And think of all the things that you could do, all the productive things that you could do with that time. Now, obviously, this isn't a problem for everyone. There are a lot of people who use public transportation. And so I started thinking as well about the rollout of the rural school bus program, which absolutely is to be commended, because that was sorely lacking in the rural areas and still is, because it's not completely island-wide. Not everybody benefits just yet. So it absolutely is to be commended that we now have this rural school bus program. But I also think about, even though we have the JETC, the Jamaica Urban Transit Corporation, there's still so much improvement that needs to be done in order to address the traffic congestion in the corporate area, specifically in Kingston. And I just think about all the money, because they said time is money, right? All the money that we are losing by having people sitting in traffic for hours doing nothing. Imagine what can be done with that time, the loss of productivity that is just day after day after day, because you're not supposed to be on your phone in traffic, and they now have laws enforcing that so that you can be ticketed and fined if the police catch you using your phone in traffic. It's really ridiculous. Now, when you think about the average workday, a workday is supposed to be about 8 hours, right? And if you're spending 2 hours in traffic per day between coming, going, picking up kids, all this stuff in between, 2 hours out of 8 hours is equivalent to 25% of a typical workday. And I know the 2 hours is supposed to be outside of the 8 hours because you're supposed to get there for 8. So the first hour would be before, but still, if we're measuring it in terms of productive hours, it would be equivalent to 25% of your workday. Now, depending on what you do, let's say you work in the service industry, you are a nail tech or a hairdresser. 2 hours is an entire appointment. It's an entire appointment that you miss. A good, however much it costs to do your nails, a good 10 grand. How much eyelash tech? How much that costs now? 8 grand, 10 grand. Hair appointment, barbering. What can you do in 2 hours? And then for those who work in more sophisticated fields, let's say you work in sales and you earn commission. How many sales calls could you have done in those 2 hours? And technically, I guess you can do it on the phone hands-free, but your concentration, sometimes you really need to be focused and dialed in, especially if we're working with big clients. How much money can you make in 2 hours? And so although steps are being taken to address the issue, I feel like so much more really needs to be done to improve urban transportation and rural transportation. And I think a big part of that issue is getting it right as it relates to schools. Why do we, individual parents, need to be there to pick up and drop off our kids every single day? I understand, yes, you wanna hold them up and kiss them up, but do we really need to do it that way? There have been attempts to try to encourage carpooling, but if there was a more reliable transportation system, we do not need to have so many cars on the road. It increases pollution, and like I said, it increases or decreases productivity. And that's not even counting the loss of sleep hours because you have to get up so much earlier to travel. Worse, people coming from Portmore, Spanish Town, coming into town, battling Mandela traffic to and from. Then there's the loss of family time, the decline in your happiness because you get and to work so tired. All of these things also affect productivity. You're being tired all the time and you lack motivation to come to work. That impacts your productivity as well. So on the opposite side, conversely, when all of this is work, when all of this works how it's supposed to work, think of the economic gains to our society if we would be able to fix this problem. So if we're losing $60 million a day in lost productivity due to traffic, then if we're fixing this problem, we are gaining $60 million a day as a country. Imagine the increase in our GDP. They've been trying to get to 5 and 4 for so many years, trying to get higher than 1% growth forever. Imagine the surge in productivity if collectively as a nation, we all had 2 extra hours per day because we're not struggling and suffering in traffic. An extra $60 million a day. Multiply that, where's my calculator? Multiply that by how many working days did I say per year? 200 and, let me find it, where's the notes? 261 working days times $60 million a year. An extra $15.6 billion could be added to our economy. Can you imagine? Can you imagine how much of an improvement that would be to our economy? Multiply that by all the people who make that commute. Millions of dollars as people would be able to do more because of the time saved, rest more, have better mental health, and all of these things. I see some comments coming in, so let me start looking at some of the comments before I continue because I have a few things that I want to talk about this evening. some of you commenting on what I was saying. Garvin says too many of the perceived good schools are in Kingston. That's a big part of the traffic problem. So that's another factor as well. Improving the quality standard of schools outside of Kingston so that people don't feel obligated to send their kids to school in Kingston. Scotty says transportation is a factor. Definitely would love to see city train. Chairman says, can't wait for the local stock market to benefit from the new government policy changes to come. And also says, for those knocking the school bus system, where are your alternative solutions and how feasible are they? Ryan says, we're not in traffic doing nothing. We're stuck in traffic, which is a stressful situation that can be a health hazard. Stressing leads to heart attack, plus trying to avoid accidents. Oh, yep, exactly my point. Orville said 1%, thought they said the economy is booming. Christopher says one major factor to traffic is the lack of the urban area being designed for people and not cars, lack of proper sidewalk design, lack of cycle lane, etc. I'm glad that you brought up this issue, Christopher, about urban design, because another thing on my mind this evening as I drove here to the studio this evening, the Money Studio is located on Wellington Drive. And for those of you who traverse this area, you would know that Wellington Drive has been a mess for the past couple of months. They've dug up the road. They're doing major infrastructure work. And it was supposed to have been done. The last I saw, they said the road would reopen August 18. It is reopened, but reopen is a very loose word to use. You can drive along the road, but it is not the road that it was a couple months ago, because the work continues. You have to drive very carefully. And as I drive along this roadway as well, and I look left to right, because I've lived in this community for many years, it is a completely different landscape than it was even 5 years ago. From when I first moved to this neighborhood over 15 years ago, completely different. There are barely any single family homes left here. And so although I haven't heard it in the announcements, what I imagine a big part of the work is they're improving the infrastructure to facilitate all of these high rises going up in this community along this corridor. Like I said, there are very few single family homes remaining here now. All you see is big apartment buildings. Next door, there's one going up over there. There's one that just went up on the other side. Across the road, there is major construction happening. And of course, the infrastructure is not designed to accommodate all of these high rises. The infrastructure here was designed to accommodate single family homes. And then eventually it became townhouses and small apartment complexes. And now it is high rise apartment complexes, 5 stories and up. And so what they have had to do is dig up the entire road, I imagine, to make sure that they are able to facilitate the water infrastructure, the pipes. I was looking up before I came on air what the announcement would have said from NWC. So it says to facilitate the continued installation of sewer mains and the upgrading of water infrastructure. And then it says Delano Williams, acting corporate public relations manager at NWC, said work should have been completed by the end of July, but he noted it has since expanded beyond the installation of main sewers to now include potable water infrastructure. So now they have to dig up the road. Hopefully they pave it back to the level that it was before to facilitate all of this rapidly increasing, rapidly developing infrastructure that is occurring along this corridor. And I just wish that there was better planning as it relates to the timing, because we were told the work would have been done August 18, the road is going to be reopened, but now school is back open. There is a major prep school on this road, St. Peter and Paul School, and I don't know what the traffic has been like, because I have avoided this area around that time for that purpose, but I can imagine it has been a complete nightmare since yesterday morning. And I know in the Karachi area, which is next door, people have been using that corridor as an alternative route. And I saw messages in the community group chat this evening about complete and utter gridlock. And that's what happens when a major road like Wellington is disrupted. And now we have school being let back in, students having to be transported to and from school, and a major corridor is essentially out of service or not being able to be used in the way that it traditionally is used. So another thing that really is irking me, that the lack of, not say accountability, but planning in making sure that these things are done in the summer months and completed on time, so that we don't have the level of disruption that we are seeing right now. Ryan says, Khalila's giving us transportation economics and transportation planning, LOL. Clarissa says, Belize has the same problems too. Garvin says 1% is still growth. GDP is now over 20 billion US. TT is 28 billion. Slow and steady wins the race. Javon says, I think the traffic is a result of everyone trying to commute at the same peak hour. We Jamaicans love last minute too much. Well, school starts and ends around the same time for every school. So it's not like we have a staggered school day. Ryan says the development of Wellington Drive is part of urban planning. Upgrading is part of planning. There are no more lands in Kingston for single family development. So going high rise is next. Yeah, that's true. But I'm saying just time it better. Time it so that it doesn't coincide with when we have schools being open. Garvin says, I don't think it's just last minute rush. We're all forced to start work at 8 and leave by 5. Flexi work legislation is just on paper. Exactly. That's part of the problem. Raquel reminding you to like and come in. Kish says the traffic issue is experienced in many countries during peak hours. The same here in parts of the UK. And I know it is a worldwide issue, but I'm just thinking, if we can apply innovative methods to alleviate it, at least in part, how much money could we as a country be saving, and how much could we increase our productivity? Ezekiel says they need to look at underground trains to various points and a dam to reap the water from the Rio Cobre. And so we're now at 8:28. There's one other thing that I wanted to mention as well. So the Jamaica Stock Exchange released their April 2025 report. And according to that report, 52 annual reports were due, but only 30 were submitted on time. That's a compliance rate of only about 58%. So barely half of the companies listed on the stock exchange are submitting their annual reports on time. And the issue isn't only with the annual reports, but other key disclosures as well. And this is an issue we've been talking about here on Taking Stock for at least a year now, maybe about 2. Remember, David Rose has brought up this issue about the lack of auditors, qualified auditors, all the new requirements. For the past at least a year, we've been talking about this issue. And for some people, it might not be that big of a deal, but the truth is we're living in a post-SSL Jamaica where investors are already wary of investing. There is a lot of fear amongst the market, and there is a lack of confidence as well. And this is only exacerbated when you have barely half of your companies filing their audited reports on time. Transparency is one of the main parts of a stock market. And then you have junior market companies that seem to be struggling the most. Main market companies struggling as well. But when you look at the numbers, those junior market companies are really struggling to get those reports in on time. You look at a company like Edufocal, which is actually still suspended from trading because of late filing of their audited financials, and that suspension was from June. We're now in September, and the JSE has been warning about this issue from as far back as 2019, that lack of auditors lack of auditing firms and people joining the profession has been an issue. And so now it makes me wonder, okay, we have main market companies struggling. We have junior market companies struggling even more to file their reports on time. Yet we have plans in train to introduce a micro market, a micro stock exchange as early as next year. And I wonder, is now the right time for us to be doing that? Because if main market companies and junior market companies are struggling to get their audited reports in time, imagine the struggles that are going to be faced by micro market companies. These are companies that earn, I think it's 20 million or less. It might be 50. I can't remember the number offhand. I think it's 50 million Jamaican dollars or less per year. You know how much an audit costs? Audit is enough money. And so if the companies with money are struggling to get auditors, to hire auditors to release their audited financial statements on time, imagine these much smaller firms who do not have as much cash at their disposal to hire the very same auditors because they're very few. How are they going to comply? I feel like there's going to be an even worse compliance issue when that time comes. And this is something that the working group, the working committee that is looking to establish the micro stock exchange, they are going to have to very, very seriously consider. Is now the right time? Are they going to be able to address those compliance issues? Because these companies will likely have need to have stricter regulations than even junior market companies. And so this is one of the issues that I want to address with the new CEO of the Jamaica Stock Exchange, Livingston Morrison, when he joins us, hopefully next week. I'm going to leave it there for now. Let's take our poll question. So here's tonight's poll question. What should be the Jamaica Labour Party's top priorities during their first 100 days in office? What do you think should be the JLP's top priorities during their first 100 days in office? Here are your options. A, infrastructure development. B, crime. C, healthcare and education. Or other. Leave a comment. What should be their top priorities? There's so many. We only had 4 options to choose from, but economy, implementing the income tax plan, minimum wage. There's so many different things, but these are your options. And of course, you can always say what else you think it should be. What should be the Jamaica Labour Party's top priorities during their first 100 days in office? A, infrastructure. B, crime. C, healthcare and education. D, other. Leave a comment. And you can leave your answers in the chat or take the poll over on the community tab of our channel. It will be in tomorrow morning's email as well. Subscribe at getmoneynews.com. Up next, we've got your market recap, and our analyst is standing by. Market Recap is brought to you by MyMoneyJA, the official data partner of Money Media. Get 10% off your subscription with the code MONEYMISSION. The JSE Combined Index was mostly flat last week. 124 stocks traded across the main and junior markets for the week ending Friday, September 5, 2025. 64 made gains, 52 lost value, and 8 stayed the same. 66 million shares changed hands on the Jamaican dollar market, valued at $302 million. TransJam was the week's most traded stock, with 27 million shares changing hands. It started the week at $3.72. Meanwhile, its USD counterpart slipped 4% to start Monday at 2 cents US. And Wigton rounded out last week's most traded stocks, down 5%. Now let's see who had the biggest gains. Cargo Handlers was the JSE's top stock, up 28% to open the week at $14.50. KLE Group was the second biggest gainer, up 21%. And Medical Disposables and Supplies rounded out the top stocks, up 20%. On the losing side now, Margaritaville Turks USD lost 15% to start the new week at 7 cents US. SOS fell 13% to open Monday at $1.61, and Image Plus fell 10%. Over on the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, the composite index fell 6 points last week. That's about 1%. NCBFG was the TTSE's most traded stock. It opened Monday at $1.91 TT. Medcore was the TTSE's top gainer, up 6%. And on the losing side, Trinidad and Tobago NGL fell 8% to open Monday at $3.18 TT. Over in the U.S., the Dow Jones, S&P 500, and the Nasdaq were all mostly flat last week. At the pumps, gas prices in Jamaica rose $3.06 last week, while the cost of regular diesel dropped 56 cents and low sulfur diesel fell 25 cents. In foreign exchange trading, it took an average $161.31 Jamaican to purchase $1 last Friday. That's 22 cents more than the week before. $1 Canadian cost on average $118.36 Jamaican. $1 British pound cost $217.78 Jamaican, and you could buy €1 for $180.60 Jamaican on average. Finally, on the crypto markets, Bitcoin prices were flat over the past 5 days, trading at $111,971 on Monday. Meanwhile, Ethereum fell 2%, trading at $4,326 on Monday. Market Recap was brought to you by My Money JA, the official data partner of Money Media.
Subscribe to my newsletter for money news like this straight to your inbox. Go to getmoneynews.com to sign up. The link is in my bio. Let's get this money.
This segment of Taking Stock, The Analyst, is brought to you by JMMB Group, your best interest at heart.
The views expressed in this segment are not necessarily the views of Money Media. This information is for educational purposes only and is not intended as financial advice. Please consult a licensed financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Welcome back. It's time now for the analyst. But before we do that, let me take some of your comments, especially your responses to our poll question. What should be the JLP administration's priority during their first 100 days in office? Here are some comments. So we have Kish saying A, which was, what was A again? Infrastructure. Christopher says education. Awakening says healthcare and education. Christopher says the same, health and education. Tamika says infrastructure. We got Ingrid saying C, healthcare and education. Diplomat says crime. Clarissa says infrastructure. Scotty also says infrastructure. Javon says fixing corruption and the education system. We have too much uneducated. Chairman wanted to know, can anyone confirm if TJH has begun charging for the new leg of the highway? Still not yet. Still freeness going on over that side. Christopher says, cooperation and planning between public entities such as NWC and NWA is needed, which is not happening. One roadway is disrupted multiple times for individual infrastructure upgrades. You know how they do when it comes to NWA and NWC. So NWA will pave a brand new road, and 2 weeks later, you see NWC come dig up the road to lay pipes. Like, no kind of coordination, no kind of planning. Ryan says, when it comes to the water system budget and a deadline, it's very hard to time it. However, each Jamaican needs to develop time management skills when interacting with the business community. Trivia giving us a football update. Jamaica 2, Trinidad 0 at 65 minutes. Jamaica's on the way to World Cup. Go Jamaica. All right. Who else do we have? Let's see. Noel says, good night, watching from Trelawney. And no announcement yet. We need Ivan Anderson on the program again, right? Yeah. Let's introduce our analyst for this evening. We're joined today by Andre Reed, senior trader at JMMB. Welcome back to the show, Andre.
Good evening, Karina. Thanks for having me.
All right. So tonight we are talking about foreign exchange, the trajectory, because I feel like we were all anxious about the JMD passing 160 to 1. But then it happened, and no big deal, no big hullabaloo, nothing. It passed 161, and that kind of just flew under the radar, and here we are. What's the trajectory looking like now, Andre?
So let me just take a step back to say that for the year so far, there has been improved demand. We've seen where, yes, you're right, that currency has actually moved from 156.42 rounded at the start of the year to now be at 161.29 as at the end of trading today. Overall, a lot of the demand that we're seeing is actually from entities or institutions that are primarily in the business of importation of goods and services, and the BOG has actually continued to intervene to supply that demand. They've sold 730 million US dollars to the market so far, which is just about 6.95% of the overall trading volumes in the market so far. Now, the truth is that, one would have argued, and we have had those conversations in the past where analysts are saying that the BOJ is too active in the market. I think a report actually, or a recommendation actually came from the IMF at 1.2 to say they
Right.
should allow. Sorry.
Yes, I was agreeing with you. There was that IMF recommendation a few weeks
Right.
ago.
Right, to say that they should allow the currency to devalue a little bit more. Now, the issue with that is that once you have, that increased pace of devaluation or depreciation in the currency, what it will translate to be is, a higher rate of inflation possibly, because now you have that pass-through effect between the currency itself and inflation, because a lot of what we do here is reliable on or relying on the importation cost. So the BOJ at this point, I don't foresee that they're going to be opting to stay out of the market significantly, especially given that I think the last inflation number came out somewhere in the 3% region, and they would want to see those numbers trending down. And I think that is below what the target range is. I remember the target range between 4 to 6%, right? So once you have that number relatively low, I believe that they'll continue to maintain a presence in the market. We're also heading into the latter
Iran and
part of
Venezuela
2025,
strengthen
where
alliances both condemn U.S.
overall
pressure.
depreciation in the currency is usually a little bit muted. Why? Because we tend to get remittance inflows, not a lot of activities that are dependent largely on buying currency. We're not seeing where, just for example, the recent election results would have caused any form of um, uncomfortableness in the market, to say that there is speculative demand or anything like that. So overall, at least for the rest of the year, we're expecting that there, while it still points towards the upside, the movement that we'll get is expected to be relatively orderly. And at some point, we also expect that the BOJ will continue to intervene in the market as well. Now, the context, some people may argue, is that while with the BOJ's involvement, the NIR is actually expected to be affected. Now, we have not seen that significantly playing out, because I think the NIR now is the second month of over 6 billion. I think that's what 30 something weeks of imports. So, and I believe that they will always continue to look to protect the NIR. I know one of the things that they actually have as well to help support the currencies flowing into coffers is actually asking authorized dealers, meaning banks, building societies, and cambios, to actually sell a percentage of their purchases to the BOJ on a weekly or even daily basis. So overall, I think the market is expected to be somewhat stable, even though we may actually get moved toward the upside, but it will not necessarily be reflective of the peers that we might have seen towards, well, earlier in 2025.
And so we're going to talk a little bit more about the BOJ as well. But I remember one of the last times you were on, Andre, we kind of laughed at the thought of the JMD
165?
getting to 200. We laughed at the thought of JMD getting to 200 to 1, and now we're at 160 odd. Is 200 something that seems more likely now than it did at the start of the year?
Not right now. No, not this year. Not in the fiscal year. Not likely to happen. I believe the BOJ will throw everything in their arsenal at it to ensure that we don't get to those levels. In fact, you have to think about it from the perspective of what it means for goods on the shelves. Now, remember that a lot of what we buy, well, enough of what we buy is actually from imports. Even the input costs are from from things that we import. So if we do get that $200, that's a big percentage of our purchasing power that would have actually gone through the window. Not I'm gonna say that we're not likely to experience that in the next couple of months, not in this fiscal year at all.
All right, that's some consolation, but not much, to be honest.
Well, yes,
Where, based on the current trajectory, like where would you predict we're going to end the year?
prediction. Um, it's difficult to say because there are a number of different variables that could actually affect it. And I was actually about to interject to say that the movement in the currency is not entirely dependent on just domestic factors because there are also external factors that could actually cause it. It would have had to be experiencing prolonged periods of uncertainties, financial turmoil on the external markets as well. It would also be a case of the government themselves actually reducing or laxing the fiscal discipline that they would have already have. And it's hard to see both of those situations playing out significantly to the point that we will get that major run on the currency. There are geopolitical issues that we also have to consider, and whether or not we end up in a situation where the world is on the fire. There are pockets of issues. It's recently we see where Venezuela is being on edge, but to say that that escalates with the situation in Russia, Israel, that kind of thing, I don't necessarily see us ending up in a very dire situation unless there is a much more broad scale situation of geopolitical issues. To end the year, it's difficult. It's very difficult to say. I think maybe we should be somewhere in the 160s ballpark. I don't foresee that we should get beyond 165. That's a very aggressive approach. But given the arsenal that we've seen where the BOJ is actually throwing behind the currency, I don't foresee that we will be again, there are external factors to consider. And usually I don't like throwing around numbers because some of these things we don't see them until they just pop up. But at this point, 165, even to stay in the 160s region is a bit of a modest expectation from my perspective.
Should BOJ continue to be as aggressive as they as they have been in defending the currency?
I believe that they should. The reason is that, again, as I mentioned, the cost of goods that we actually have on the shelf will be affected. And so, from that perspective, they should actually maintain the presence. There's also the issue of their desire to reduce interest rates. Now, you can't be looking to reduce interest rates when inflation itself
Boris
is
Johnson
heading
faces
towards
scrutiny over
the
undisclosed
upside.
Venezuela
So,
links
if
and
they
hedge
want
fund
to
ties.
continue on that path, then it's a tool that they will have to continue to use to defend the currency.
Yeah, inflation. All is going on, and it all affects our pockets. Like, I'm thinking about what the back to school expenses were this year compared to last year, and prices, everything just gone up. Like, it's been insane.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound like I'm trivializing the fact that things have actually gotten a little bit more expensive, but I was reading an article. I don't like to point out specific areas, but I was reading an article on the weekend where an analyst was actually saying that back to school shopping back to school overall has been significantly affected because in that particular economy they are experiencing issues with foreign exchange challenges, and uh, it's quite muted, again, because of the issue that they have around foreign currency and the availability of it. Jamaica does not necessarily have that situation as yet. Not exactly likely that we would do that. A number of things would have had to happen. But yeah, overall cost has gone up, and I think a lot of it has actually had to do with the a number of external factors, not just the movement in the currency itself.
Garvin is pointing out that the JMD depreciates around 3% every year. Now, it's an interesting point because I remember a few years ago when the BOJ was implementing BFIXIT, foreign exchange intervention trading tool, I think it stands for. The
Right.
whole argument was that, okay, now we're going to start seeing Jamaica's currency going both up and down. Because for years, it only moved one direction. Only one direction is up. And now that they have this new tool, we're going to start seeing it going up and down. It's going to fluctuate. Some days it will be up, some days it will be down. But in general, we're still seeing it inch up and up and up.
Well, so the trend is still up, but there are days when you actually end up with revaluation. There are periods when you end up with little to no movement in the currency. There are revaluation days, man. There
Yeah,
are
it does
some months,
happen. It does
right?
happen. But when you examine the long term over the period of a year, 2 years, 5 years, it's
Mhm.
still going one way in general.
It would because again we depend a lot on imports. So once you have to be importing to that magnitude, it's not going to be a case of experiencing a currency that would be revaluing. Not like that.
Noel says Jamaica needs to build its net international reserves. Well, we're at 6 billion. Do
We're
we
over six
need more
billion, I
than
think,
that?
now. Sorry.
Do we need more than that?
It's always good to actually have extras in the coffers. I wouldn't say that we don't need it. It would be ill advised of me. I think July and August actually were over 6 billion, and for the last I think 18 months now we would have been over 5 billion. That's a respectable number. I would say that over time as things evolve, that number would actually will that number increasing would actually mean positive for the country overall because it is sort of your last ditch back pocket item that you can use to defend your economy in times of turmoil, especially when externally things are happening that are out of your control.
Chairman says best to earn USD rather than be buying it, though. Well, with that I agree. I imagine you do too.
Yes, given it depends because the thing is, and I'm not going to disagree with the point, but there are some institutions that will they do earn foreign exchange and they have bills in Jamaican dollars, so they're always converting, and the amount that they have to convert on a monthly basis actually gets cheaper if the Jamaican dollar payable as in bills actually remains the same over time. So it does add some protection to your portfolio if it's a case where you earn foreign exchange and your expenses are actually in Jamaican dollars.
Chun says stop importing rubbish from abroad. Would
Rubbish.
that, would that
Uh,
solve the problem?
I'm not sure exactly what the rubbish is that we
All,
do.
all the consumption, and especially now since they increased the duty free exemption from $50 to $100, people are just buying stuff on Amazon and Shein and all these places.
We're talking about the impulsive buying.
I suppose so. But do you think that
Um,
that has had an impact on where the JMD is now? The increase in the de minimis threshold from 50 to 100, so it creates more demand for USD because people now are able to buy more and bring it into the country duty free.
Mhm. Well, I don't have the exact number in terms of what that looks like, but I suspect it would have an effect. The magnitude to which it does is something that I cannot exactly speak to right now. But yes, you're right that some people would actually buy more because they're actually able to buy without paying that duty. But the truth is that if you really think about it from this perspective, right? If you have an income of let's say $10,000, right? Just for argument's sake, and you were thinking of buying a shoe, and that shoe in a store costs $5,000, right? The truth is that if you buy it online, some people actually believe that, and again, I won't speak to that side of it. That if you buy it online yourself, you actually get it cheaper. You might actually end up with a little savings, and therefore you might actually be able to have some in your pocket. But from a need perspective, it's something that even if you didn't buy it online yourself, chances are you would have walked into a store to buy it, and that store themselves would have actually bought it from overseas to actually sell to you here. So it's not a case of all of the changes is filtering into the foreign exchange. Some of it, in terms of the additional buying, that probably would be an effect that we're talking about here.
I'm going to take this last comment from Javon, who says, isn't it time to back our currency against a stronger currency or metals to lower its volatility? What do you think about that?
Uh, it's a tough one. I'm not. I don't necessarily see that happening right now. It would require some change in framework that again it's difficult to see how it plays out. And then if you're talking about commodities overall, it's commodities generally have a lot more volatility embedded in them. If you look at oil, gold, that kind of thing, then it's a story that is a much more wild game than if you're talking about just the currency itself. So it would be a difficult sell to act for us to be getting into that space, but never say never. I doubt it will happen, but stranger things have happened, right?
True, true, true. Well, on that note, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Andre. Great discussion on the currency. We'll take our final break and come back with your comments.
This segment of Taking Stock, The Analysts, was brought to you by JMMB Group, your best interest at heart.
Guess what? You don't need to be rich in order to start investing. As a matter of fact, investing is how you get rich. You can start with as little as 1,000 Jamaican dollars at some firms, like this security guard that I met a few months ago. That's how much you started with?
1,000.
1,000.
Yeah. That's a good thing to do it still, to learn more.
Are you happy with it so far?
Yes.
Check out my Investing for Beginners course. Go to investingforbeginnersja.com to get started. Let's get this money.
Welcome back. Let's take some of those final comments. Garvin says the depreciation is predictable, though, so that's progress. It makes it easier for the business community to plan and make investments. I guess that's one way of looking at it. Chun says lots of Jamaicans living abroad, they have cash in the bank at very low rates in the UK and the USA. Make a bond that pays higher rates than their bank. So we've been talking about this idea of having a diaspora bond for years. At least 10 years I've been hearing this touted. Nobody has done it. I think David from Blue Maho Capital has something out there now for that he's calling a diaspora bond. I'm not sure what the details on that particular thing is, but should it be a government-led initiative? How do we harness the power of the diaspora? It's a conversation that we have had for many years, and we just have not been able to collectively pursue that and implement it and actually do it. So yeah, you're right. Lots of Jamaicans abroad, they have cash USD, but they're sending it in remittances, which has its impact as well. 20% of the Jamaican economy comes from remittances. But how do we harness that for public good? At least a portion of it, right? Chun Key says, build your own cars. Simple. In theory, maybe not that simple. Sean responded, the cost of electricity is the issue. Jamaica can easily produce and export cars, pots, pans alike, but electricity is too high. Definitely one of the prohibiting factors for our manufacturing sector here is that very, very high cost of electricity, which is why it has become a political issue with the Jamaica Labour Party government now saying that, well, they're going to renegotiate JPS's license. We still have this very ambitious target of getting to 50% of renewables by 2030, which is in 5 years. They say they're on track, but when I look at the progress, to me, it seems iffy that they're going to meet that 5-year timeline. But let's see. Wigton has a contract now for more projects. They're getting into solar. They have these RFPs to put out for other projects to bring them to the amount that they need to be. But yeah, we really, really need to do something about reducing electricity costs in Jamaica, especially if we want to be a manufacturing powerhouse. And guess what? Guyana is now there, positioning themselves. If you saw the show we did with Uni Abdullah a couple of weeks ago, they want to position themselves as a manufacturing hub, a major manufacturing hub. And they are about to have, or they now have the energy resources to do so. George says the U.S. Embassy is signaling they want it to go to 165. Where did you hear that news? I missed that piece of news. Really? I didn't see that anywhere. But I can look into it. And then Chun says, use that cash to invest in your country. Wow. Okay. And last point coming here. Start with manufacturing even simple items that are used every day. But we do have companies that do that, Omni being one. Omni does the plastics, the thermoplastics and stuff. Import materials and make them in your country. Less spent on imports, create jobs, raise taxes, and the money will circulate. All right. We're going to leave it there for this week. Thank you so much to everybody who tuned in, who joined us this week. Thanks so much to our hardworking production team led by the lady, Sachelle Williams, Alexa Roberts, our video editor, Izzy, on the social media front. Thank you to you for tuning in. Thank you to our guest, Andre Reed from JMMB. And it has been my pleasure serving you yet another week. Check out the restock at Fontana of the Money Mission Workbook. Should be sometime this week. I dropped them off already. So look out for those on shelves. And we're also going to be coming to a local platform in about 20 days. You're going to hear a lot more about that very soon. That launch is coming up. And you're going to be able to order your Money Mission workbooks locally through my website and through that platform and get it delivered locally, I believe at the end of this month, on the end of September. So that's an exciting move. This company is launching a solution, so a logistics solution for small businesses. And I think that's something that was very greatly needed. So it's not just a marketplace where you can list your items, but they will hold your items in their inventory at their warehouse, so that when somebody orders off their website, their platform, or your website, they fulfill that for you. So you don't have to be calling, driver, organizing how you're going to get it from point A to point B. They deal with all of that through their platform. I think it's a very innovative solution. It is much needed, and you're going to hear more about that in the coming weeks. And we'll have our workbook there very soon as well. But in the meantime, you can still get it at Fontana or on Amazon.com. Yep. All right. So I'm Kalila Enriquez Reynolds. Once again, follow us all over social media at kalila.money and at Money Media JA on Instagram. Subscribe to the newsletter at getmoneynews.com. Remember, these are our only platforms. Report the scammers and the impersonators when you see them. Now tell a friend about taking stock, because investing is the new sexy. So let's make it cool to talk about money. See you next week.